Hello, welcome to the Zero Ends channel. Please like and subscribe. Please enjoy our live.
Okay. Welcome, guys, and a new little setup, a new thing I'm doing here. Welcome to the Zero Ends channel. I am Zero Ends here, and as you know, I'm going back and forth testing how things sound on my end. Looks like everything sounds good. Make sure. Sorry about that, guys. Let me check. Make sure. If I did this already, hold on. Doing this new stream is weird. Anyway, I've forgotten this. So, what is on the docket today? As you can tell from the title and the little thumbnail, it looks like the United States and the UK could be in some big trouble. And this was a discussion that was gone on maybe a week and a half ago. I'm not sure how long ago this was conversation. But as you can tell by the financial analysis by the name of Ray D, that's the thumbnail. He had a conversation with a gentleman from the UK, and they talked about this thing about the money and some brief politics. But really, the importance is where things are heading right now. And this is not going to be a popular stream. I anticipate this will be something that people might like, might not like, but nonetheless, this is content, and the content speaks for itself. Now, as you know, I am not a financial advisor. I just cover the information ahead. And I get my own take on things. But maybe some resource or just my honest opinion on things. I think what this particular president is doing, and maybe other countries that's already done, is they might start the next phase, and that is going to cryptocurrency and make it more a digital economy. And if we don't see it by this year, I should see more of the implications going on in possibly 2026 here in the West. Possibly. But I could be wrong. But nonetheless, we're going to begin the stream. Make sure you like the stream. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. And sit back and enjoy. So no further ado, let's play the video at hand. And please, guys, leave your comments and your thoughts and opinions. Let's go.
In a strange way, you're part of our history, and you're on this journey with us, and I appreciate you for that. So yeah, thank you. Ray, I want to describe to you who's listening right now. And the question I have for you is, what is the most important thing that this persona of person should be thinking about at the highest level right now? So the person that's listening is someone who is intent on improving their life. They're really interested in business, potentially starting their own business. They care about where they're investing their time and energy, and also where they're setting up their home based on, in terms of geography. They are aspiring to accomplish some goal. They're probably between the age of 18 and 50, predominantly. And they are very, very interested in understanding what's happening in a world that feels incredibly scary, fast-paced, and uncertain at the moment. This is a very difficult question, but if I was going to ask anyone, it would have to be you. What's one of the first things they should be considering at this moment to safeguard their future, their family, their finances?
I don't think it's a difficult question. I think it's very clear. They have to understand how the life cycle works. Okay, they have to understand how it works. We were just talking before, in the book, and there was the arc of the life cycle, right? And you have to understand that you're on an adventurous journey, okay? And you have a certain nature, those qualities that make you have your preferences and so on. And then you're going after the things that you like, and you're learning, and it's going to have the ups and downs and so on, and how you approach that. So you asked from the higher level, if I'm looking down, like that life cycle, that arc.
Now, mind you, guys, there will be a delay because I'm using a different streaming service. So, as you know, as you watch, and I pop up time to time, and he has a nice little graph here. I'm not sure this graph really depicts, but it looks like some importance. I think he said this is a life cycle, and let me look at my other end. I'll look into more of this. All right, let's keep going.
What's that journey like? How do you approach it? What are your principles? How do you even learn how to approach it? That's why we're having these conversations, right?
Yep.
So that's clear. What's your nature? How's the journey? How do you find the path that's suitable to your nature? And then you'll go down that path and you'll discover and you'll evolve. What's that like? That's what they need to know.
You said, what's your nature? What do you mean by nature?
People are born with, and then also their environment creates their different nature. We have our preferences, our inclinations. We think in a certain way. You chose to be entrepreneurial. Okay. You're living out your nature. Okay. This isn't for somebody else. Some people have a different nature. Okay. They would like to have the stability of a job and clarity and so on. So when you have your nature, you want to know that and then find the path that is going to be good for your nature. Then there's the particular tactical stuff. So if you would ask me, should I be in the UK or should I be in the US? Well, that depends on a lot of things, but that's
Not really. It depends on where you at now and what type of things you see, what you're trying to do or what you're trying to accomplish in the next, let's say, 5-10 years. I think a lot of people today don't have roadmaps, and I'm more the person that don't propose give. I'll say this: I don't propose anything to anybody, but it's always logical and a smart thing to do is to plan out how you want things to be, how things to proceed in direction where you're trying to head. A roadmap is more simple than anything else, but most human beings nowadays, we don't plan things 5-10 years down the line for our own preservation. We like to deal with the now and then, like women only deal with the now and then. They don't really do things down the line, roughly, and a lot of men have got caught up on that. And to really move forward, you gotta see yourself where you're really actually going. So let's go.
a tactical question.
So if I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to build a technology company, do you think I should be in the UK or the US?
I think you should be in the US.
Why?
The US has a culture of entrepreneurship, inventiveness. There's a whole different culture, like in Europe, generally speaking.
I'm not sure if the United States it has that proponent of entrepreneurship, because if we look at the United States today as it stands, we only see what? Matter of fact, let me do a little rundown. Let's continue on this.
And in the UK, there's an establishment culture, right? And here, you could be 25, have a blue streak in your hair, and have the talent. But if you got the talent to pull it off, you can get the resources and you can be an entrepreneur. There's a culture of that. That means that it's happening more. That's why you even see the differences in the economies. Okay. Where is the inventiveness really happening? Okay. It's happening here. So I would say if you want to be an entrepreneur, this is an environment that's particularly conducive to being an entrepreneur.
So what is your honest perspective about the UK at the moment?
The UK has a financial problem. The government has a debt problem. And it doesn't have enough money for what it wants to do and what it can do. And so what you see is the non-dom problem, people moving, and so on and so forth. And throughout history, when you have these sorts of things, then there's great clashes in people, okay? And the UK has been in decline since the war. Even the development of the capital markets, can you raise capital there? All of these things are much worse than they are in the United States.
And it leads to clashes, you said?
Of course, there are 5 big forces that create a big cycle that lasts about 80 years, give or take 50, let's say. And the five big forces are there's a money, debt, economy force. Okay. Debt's their spending power. So what happens is when you give somebody credit, they can spend. And then, but it also produces debt. And debt has to be paid back. And so what happens is if there's not enough income to pay back the debt, then you have debt rising relative to income. It squeezes out spending. People don't want to hold the debt assets and so on. The UK is going through that and has gone through that, and it's connected to the second force. And we're all going through this in varying degrees. The second force is the internal political and social force. In other words, like between the left and the right, with wealth gaps and opportunities gaps. We have big wealth and opportunities gaps. So when you have big wealth and opportunities gaps, there's conflict. Conflict between the left and the right. And when you get to the situation where you don't believe the system is working for you and you don't trust the system, then there are wars, there are internal conflicts over that and so on. So the third force is the geopolitical force. In other words, there's a cycle that usually goes from one big war to another big war. So the last war ended in 1944, and we began a new order in 1945. And the way that works is that the winners of the war determine how the world order works. They draw borders, they say, here's how it's going to work, and that's the new order. Okay. And that continues until there's a rising power challenging an existing power in the existing world order, which typically is deteriorating at that time. And then you have international conflict. Okay. These orders, there's a monetary order, they all break down. There's an internal political order, they all break down. And there's a geopolitical order. They all have this conflict and they work together. The fourth force throughout history has been acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics, for example, have killed more people than wars. And acts of nature. Nature has a big effect. And then number five force is man's inventiveness, particularly of new technologies. Okay, because if you see that inventiveness, that has raised per capita incomes, GDP per capita, any measures of the living standards over a period of time, and so on. But it is also related to the first four that I said. Those four forces interact. Now, when we go back to your UK case, okay, they have a financial problem. They and almost every country now is dealing with more of that internal political problem. For the same reasons, wealth gaps, opportunities gaps, what do we do? Who's got the power? I don't trust the system kind of thing. Okay. Number three is we are certainly in an international great powers conflict, right? And it certainly affects Europe and the UK as we're dealing with not only the Ukraine situation, but the Russian situation. And what does that mean? And that relates to the money thing because, okay, where's the money coming from to have defense or military expenditures and so on and so forth? So that matters, right? The geopolitical matters. Climate certainly matters. And then, of course, technology and inventiveness. So everything can be looked at through that lens.
And so what does this mean for the UK if all other countries are going through this as well? Doesn't that just mean that all countries are going to suffer equally?
No, because they're not all equal. Okay. Some are more in debt than others. Okay. Some people are more willing to hold their debt than others. Some means they have more resources. Some are bigger and more powerful. Some are less powerful. They're different. Okay. They're all in different conditions. Some countries have surpluses. Some countries, are not in the middle of where there's having a war.
Are you optimistic about the future of the UK at the moment?
No.
Because it has high debt, it has the social internal conflict, it's affected by the geopolitical factors, and in terms of inventiveness, it doesn't have the culture that other countries.
So I hope you guys got those few categories that he laid out. Now I'm going to, where is it? Oh, what I just did? Oh my goodness. Are you serious? Oh, hold on. I apologize, guys. Damn it. What I just erased? Something just happened. Yeah. Oh, God damn it. Don't tell me. Hold on. I got to pull it back up. Hold on. Hold on. Let me. Hold on. I just did something wrong. Something just happened. Where was my old history? Damn it. I think I erased my previous chat. All right, let me keep playing. I gotta find my chat. I deleted it. Why the hell did I did that? All right, let's keep going.
Have like the US, is that?
Yes, the culture and the capital markets to support that at a scale that it needs to be supported to play seriously in the game.
And for anyone that doesn't know capital markets, mean basically the investor markets is a way of saying.
Well, I mean, it gets you the money. In other words, you're a guy with what happens is we have to enable people. Okay. What works is finding great people, talented people, and identifying those who you want to bet on and enabling them. And that works. That's the most important force, much more important than money. Okay. Because you can see who's got the money and power and where did they come from? Where did NVIDIA come from? Where do they all come from? Okay. They're guys like you, entrepreneur in a sense, who's been enabled, okay, by you, because you have the talent and people want to bet on you. And that's
all right. I found it. Thank God. Let me move this over here so I don't do that again. Next to grow. All right. Now, what I had earlier, I had some here that shows about the percentage of and number of people that are entrepreneurs from both the United States and UK. And these what it's been shown by comparison. The percentage of entrepreneurs in the United States is around 16% of US adults are entrepreneurs, meaning they are starting or running a business. That's one. There are 31 million plus entrepreneurs in the United States as of 2022. Another source says 32.2 million entrepreneurs in the US by 2025. So if the US has 1 in 6 US adults are entrepreneurs, some full-time, some part-time, side business. And most people that are entrepreneurs are side business, part-time, guys. And from US and global, which is easier to be entrepreneur, the United States versus the GB. Here are some of the difference between US and UK. The economics, confidence. US micro business owners report higher confidence in business projects or prospects. UK, weakness and challenges. UK entrepreneurs are reportedly less confident in their growth prospect compared to the United States compare. I'm going to read this as clear as possible, guys, before we continue the videotape. The startup ecosystems. More unicorns, more ventures capitals, many startups, hubs, easier scales due to large markets. And there are some links to these, but I'm not going to read the links. Small population, more regulations, sometimes more conservative about risk and failure. Access to capital and market size. So I think that's borrowing, I believe. Large proponent of domestic markets, sometimes easier to get invested, scale quickly. Markets are easier, costs can be higher, regulated, and tax sometimes seem as more burdensome. Confidence in culture. America tends to celebrate risk-taking and entrepreneur more. Allegedly. UK culture is often more risk-averse, people more cautious in starting business. And I'm not sure why that is. So what they said, roughly the conclusion, the US has a higher percentage of adults actively starting or running business, about 16 through 18%, roughly. US entrepreneurs often benefit from bigger markets, more venture capital, greater cultural support for risk. While the UK has strong advantage, well-educated workforce, good infrastructure, government support in some areas. Many startups there face higher and overhaul more conservative risk cultures and more regulations in certain sectors, which can slow things down. And there's more, and there might be more studies, but it looks like the conclusion is, from what Ray Dalio said, yeah, if you're going to start something, you're better off doing it here in America. And there's more in depth why that is, but I gave the little scenarios why that is compared to UK. So let's continue on with the video tape. Very useful.
That's the capital market. So they give you money to help enable you because they want to bet on you, and then good things happen.
But are you optimistic about the United States at the moment?
The United States is very much a big picture. No, I think it's very much in this issue. So if I go down my list, it definitely has this debt money economy problem. We can get into that. Okay. It definitely has the internal conflict power in which there's a fight between the left, the hard left, and the right, due to wealth and values gaps and people not believing that the system will work for them. And so democracy is at risk because they don't believe this. They're not going to follow the rules, in the sense they don't believe the rules are going to. Number three, it's of course the leading one side in this great power conflict of the world, right? In other words, yes, between the United States and the one side, let's say, and China and the allies, their allies on the other side. I mean, in the news, you just saw the meetings of Xi, Putin, Modi, and that group over there walking down, and okay. So now it should be pretty clear how the sides are lining up. Okay. It's always better to be in a place that's not in one of those wars. Like, stay out of wars. And of course, climate has an effect. And of course, then we have technology. The United States and China are in the big technology competitions. The others are really not in the game. They don't have the money, this innovation and talent, in a sense, to play at that scale, and so on. So we have a great, technology war, which can be used to create great advances, but at the same time could be used for great conflicts. And so now the question is going to be, who wins the technology war? Because the winner of the technology war is going to win all wars. Okay. In other words, they'll win the economic war. They'll win the geopolitical war because technology. And I'm not saying anything that hasn't repeated through history.
Give me that historical context, if you can, just for
the technology, for example, nuclear.
Yeah.
Nuclear won World War II.
And does this cycle go back further than just...
Oh, no, it goes back. That book, okay. In order to understand these things, because I have to bet on what's going to happen. I'm a global macro investor. I studied the last 500 years of history, and it happens over and over again in all cases. So I could take the...
Make sure you guys like the stream, share the stream, and subscribe to the channel. The man said something about one of the innovative technology and the most dangerous of all technologies back in the, I think, late 30s was the nuclear atomic bomb. I.e., watch Oppenheimer. And because that technology, it might set the stage for the war of all wars, the most extreme and most deadly wars that is upon us, World War III. And that alone is very dangerous. And that was just the highest innovation of technology, where you could take a bomb, atomize, materialize it, and let it absorb all the atoms, molecules, and able to explode throughout the whole place. And it looks like he's holding a book right there, which I'm going to take a look right now from Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio's books. Let me look what book that guy's have. World Chain World Order by Dalio. And I'm not sure how many pages that book has. Let me look that up. If it is it in. Wait a minute. I hope it is not available for free. Let me check this. Make sure how many pages this book has. Yeah, that's not the right book. Yeah. All right, let's keep playing. Where am I?
British Empire. I could take you through all the empires, the Dutch Empire before that, and all this, and it happens all the time.
I watched your videos about this, and it's truly fascinating how predictable this stuff is, and the work that you've done to uncover this trend throughout history. I mean, it's almost, for me, it was almost irrefutable watching the evidence in I think it's like a 40-minute video on YouTube where you show how this played out through empires. And it begs the question, because when you live in the United States, when you're in the present time, you almost never assume that the empire you're in could fall. You don't see how it could happen. We're so strong. We're so great. We're so doing AI over here, have money over here. Everything's good. The sun's shining. It's inconceivable.
Of course. People always think that the future would be a slightly modified version of the present. And it's not. Okay, watch over decades. But it's like watching a person grow.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
You watch your kid or you watch a person and your age, any age.
My parents.
And that's what you see.
Yeah.
Okay? And you don't see the life arc.
Yeah.
Okay, but the life arc is irrefutable.
But do you think it's conceivable that in the next 50 to 100 years, the US could no longer be the dominant power globally?
Yeah. Yeah, more than conceivable.
More than conceivable. What do you mean by more than conceivable?
I mean that these evolutions always take place, and they take place in a certain way, and that if you look at the probabilities and the paths and the symptoms, there is a challenge the United States is facing, a number of those challenges. And we're at a moment where it's a question of whether the system and the people can get control of the situations and deal with it strongly and well in a way where they are not fighting to the point of damaging each other and damaging the prospects for the future.
But I mean, the United States is very innovative. Got all these great innovative companies here, so surely...
Yeah, but you can't make generalizations about the United States, and you can't make generalizations, by the way, about the markets either. What you see is 1%, a small percentage, 1% of the population. If you're looking at the breakdown of incomes and also you're looking at the innovation, the stock markets, which stocks are doing well, who owns those companies, and all of that, about 3 million people in a country of 330 million people are really unbelievably doing great. And you could pick the neighborhoods they're in and what they're doing. And then there's the top 10%, let's say, which is the people around them, and they're really, really doing great in that world. At the same time, the bottom 60% of Americans have below a 6th grade reading level.
Wow. And
that population, in terms of...
That's some side note. Below a 6th grade reading level. Not above it, below. Your newspapers are written in a 6th grade reading level. So right there, you're dumb from the start. And since talking about that, it makes me want to look into what is the average percentage of Americans that from race that is roughly reading on a 6th grade reading level. I'm going to look that up while we let him continue on talking, because that's very important, because that is a term factor of where you're going to really have a real literate understanding of not only the English language, that's really mostly American English, let's be honest, but really what is being said by the symbolism of words is one for people that pay attention to. So let's listen more into this.
The basics. Being productive. You have to be productive and be prosperous. So what you need to have a successful society is to have broad-based productivity and prosperity. Okay, and that's a problem. Okay, so which America are you looking at? And are you watching the war that's happening between these?
It's a little bit complicated for me as a bit of an outsider, because I see Trump saying he represents those people. But obviously Trump is from the billionaire class himself. So, I mean, is he a savior for inequality? Is he correcting inequality?
I think he sees a lot of the problem, and I think he sees the debt problem. I think he sees the internal conflict disorder problem, and I think he represents the red. Let's call it the red states. I mean, you look at a map, and there's red and blue, and you see where they are. Okay, and he represents that, and they're united behind him in terms of doing some things. Okay, so he represents, let's call it the red side, which is located where the map shows red, and then there are the blue. And he views himself as somebody who needs to take charge and to do certain things. Others in that population would say those who, let's say, are not getting or having the food stamp program cut off, or having other programs cut off that they're dependent on, would say, wait a second, that's not representing me. And so that population has gone to significant number behind him that are devotees. They're all in. Okay. At the same time as we have the other side, which will have their devotees. If we're in New York City, okay, and the upcoming mayoral election will be an example of the two sides, okay, and they will try to use the system, but there's a question: will the system have enough support to work? Okay, but that's what we have.
Just to close off on this point of the UK in particular, if you were to try and fix it, what would you be aiming at? I say this because we do have a millionaire exodus that's widely reported in the UK, where I think this year we're set to lose roughly 16,000 millionaires. When you look at the big countries like China, America, the UAE, the UK, we're losing more millionaires than anybody else. And I was wondering if you think it's fixable, and if you were in charge of the UK, what you might aim at first. It's different,
First of all, if you go back to the basic problem, which is there's too much debt, there are deficits, there's differences in education and opportunity levels, and so on. The most important thing that you can have is a strong middle.
Political middle.
To be analytically strong, and also strong enough to get the people to do what needs to be done, even if they don't want to do it, to get to be productive. Now, that's an easy thing to say. It's not an easy thing to do, but you do need that strong middle, and you do need to convey to people that you need to have this strong middle to change productivity. And are you in it? Are you in it? Are you patriotic and in it? And, but you look at history, how did the United States come to be the United States? People will go to the places that are better than them than stay in the places that are worse for them. This is fundamental, right?
Incentives.
Okay.
So in other words, people will travel from their homelands to find a much more thriving opportunity to succeed, to build their own wealth and grow and establish their own families and environments that they could prosper. Okay, got it. Let's see, is this thing? Hold on, guys. All right, let's keep going.
So you have to make the place better. Okay. Now, I would say also you can take pockets and they go into the pocket and let it spread out. But you also have to have this equal education, or, you've got to strive for equal opportunity. But anyway, it's a difficult question that I'm afraid I'm incapable of solving.
It was unnerving to hear the tone of your voice drop when I asked it. You seemed slightly as if you've kind of given up on the UK a little bit. Your facial reaction.
No, I'm a practical guy. I'm a realistic guy. I made my money. I'm in the business, and it's my nature to try to be realistic and to bet on how things will transpire. And that's not healthy. The situation in the UK is not healthy. And the situation in the United States is very risky in many ways. It's what we're describing. So, and then if you look where are people going, then you see the places that have the qualities we're talking about. They're civil. They're creative. The people aren't at war with each other.
What happens next in history?
Well, usually there's a big fight for control.
Political revolutions and things like that.
The system breaks down because they don't trust the system. So will the legal system resolve that? Will the parliamentary system resolve these disputes satisfactorily to the satisfaction of those people and the other people who have different points of view? And the sides won't believe it. And this goes back to Rome. It goes back to Caesar, the Senate. And, this goes back through history all the time, right? In the 30s, 4 major democracies chose to be autocracies, okay? That happened in Italy, Germany, Spain, and Japan.
What's autocracy for anyone that doesn't know the word?
Well, it means a dictatorship, essentially, of a limited number of people at the top who are autocratic, which means that they are directing things rather than a democracy in which there's representatives of all different points of view that get together and follow rules to make decisions.
So the UK could become an autocracy, as could the US, I guess.
You're going to see a lot of pressure for that strong leader who will get control of things and make it work well. And and you're likely to see 2 different views as to which side, the red and the blue sides, so to speak. You're likely to see that type of clash.
You said the
Make sure you guys like the stream, share the stream. I'm going to try something new, guys. I am going to switch this. I'm going to lower this. And I'm going to add something. And the only reason I'm showing Chat GPT, because I want you guys to look at this. And let me look at my other end for a second. I hope my volume's good. Let's see. And the only reason I'm showing, all right, I'll read it to y'all. This is very disturbing. And I might have to do another deep search. But from what I noticed here, I asked the question from the AI bot. And it's giving me this. On the percentage of Americans that by race that's reading roughly at the 6th grade read level. And this is what it's giving me. And they might get polls and all that, policy circles and all that nonsense, but it says here that about 54% of American adults read below the equivalent of a 6th grade level. That's half, which is really 1 in 5, roughly half. That's right. But the one thing that my assumptions were kind of conclusive that I would imagine it'd be that large percentage. But when I asked for it by race, this is where it gets caught up, and it doesn't give me by race, by whites, blacks, Hispanics, Asians. I find that to be very alarming. Very disturbing. And it said, why it's so hard to get a by race breakdown? Why I should ask why that is. And I think the reason why it is because it's going to reveal that it's not black people, black men and women that don't, let's say, if they get past 3rd grade reading level, that's something. But other racial groups that's here, born and raised in America especially, are not reading roughly at a 6th grade or above reading level. So I question the 54%. That's high. And is it really 54% or is it really 75%? I'll let y'all be the judge. So I just want to share that there, guys, because this is what I pull up. Very alarming, very scary. Anyhow, let's continue on with the stream. Fair use, fair use.
US is playing a risky game itself. Is that from a debt perspective or otherwise?
Well, from these things,
okay.
From the debt, from the internal conflict, from the changing world order, the geopolitical world conflict. You know, I don't know, we're playing with nuclear weapons and, you know, in wars in different places. And then, of course, climate, and then the technology war, how we're doing that, you know.
I saw that image the other day of Putin and President Xi in China together, walking together. If China does become the dominant force in the world, the dominant power, is that a smooth transition?
First of all, I don't think either side is going to be the clearly dominant power for a very long time. And the quickest way to have it is some kind of a war, and that's a dangerous thing. And but maybe it evolves, hopefully, the way the Soviet Union evolved, that the worry of mutually assured destruction keeps everybody not having that kind of war, and then the systems, one system or another system, wins. But that's an evolutionary process, and you know I can't say.
Do you think much about timeframes? Because when I was watching, when I was going through the changing world order, there seems to be somewhat consistent or predictable timeframes when these transitions happen. Do you think about where we are?
Well, they're long-term big cycles,
yeah.
Right? It's like a life cycle. On average, they are about a life cycle, about 80 years. But it's not predetermined, just like your life cycle is not predetermined. Like if you take care of yourself and you know, I don't know, don't smoke, eat well, exercise, and so on and so forth, then you will probably have a longer life cycle than if you don't take care of yourself. And it's kind of like that, you know, and so you see them in history, they evolve, but you can see the symptoms. Okay, you can see the actions and the symptoms, which, like taking a physical, then gives you a sense of where they are in their life cycles.
We're 80 years from World War II.
80 years from World War II, yeah.
And you're seeing the symptoms?
Yeah. Symptoms are clear. They're all in that book. You can see the charts of all the systems.
Is it something to be worried about or concerned about if you're in the United States?
No shit. I mean, yes. And then the question
to clarity, we are 80 years since after the end of World War II. And if I'm wrong, I could double check for y'all because I know it probably passed. We're in 2025. World War II ended in 1945 to be exact. They said 44, but I would say 45 is exact. All right. Let's keep going. Oh, damn. There's something wrong. Where am I? All right, let's keep going.
Is how you as an individual handle it.
How do I as an individual handle it?
Well, first of all, I think you have to be aware of the situation and the risks.
All right, so it ended May the 8th, 1945. So it ended it 80 years ago to be exact of the state. So May, June, July, August. It's now, I think, 5 months ago. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wait, let me make sure I'm math right. May, June, July, August, September. No, 4 months ago. 4 or 5 months between, to be exact. All right, let's go.
For me and my family, though, in terms of risks and how I should counteract those risks, is it a case of me saving for a rainy day? Is it a case?
That's part of it.
Yeah.
There's a saying in Hong Kong, a Chinese saying, which is a smart rabbit has 3 holes. And what that means is you can see, is it the UK or the US? And I can then move to the better place and get out of the place that's a terrible place. So can I successfully be an immigrant or whatever and change my location? Throughout history, that's been important. So the ability to go to good places and away from bad places. So that's part of it. Secondly, building your financial strength is important, which has to do with how you earn, spend, and save. That will determine the amount. And then what you do with that amount is invest. And so how you invest is also important. So if you have your financial ability and you can make the move, and then you have knowledge, about what's happening so that you can change things. Those are the things you need.
So on that first point about a smart rabbit having 3 holes, is it therefore a better decision at this point in time to not buy a house? Because a lot of people end up buying a house and it anchors them to a place. And it means that they then have to pay into a mortgage. So a lot of the financial advice most of us have growing up is when you get enough money to buy a house, move in, pay that mortgage for 25 years. But if I'm in a new economy, in a new world, and flexibility and the ability to get up and go and move is there's value to that.
The ability to move capital matters. And if you look at history, this has been an important consideration. Yes, so it matters. So if you're nailing yourself down and that's your primary capital and it's nailed down there, then does limit your flexibility.
And on the point of earning, spending, and saving, I wondered what you're a father, aren't you?
Yeah.
What advice are you giving to your children about earning money in the current world, where they should set up their shop, the skills that are most valuable to acquire, the technologies? We talked about the US being one of the better places to build your career for all the reasons you described.
Well, that's kind of like the particular that you asked me for that's below the level of the higher level. Okay. The higher level is I have a principle. Make your work and your passion the same thing and don't forget about the money part. Okay. If you make your work and your passion the same thing so that you're really enjoying your work, you'll have an enjoyable, satisfactory life, and you'll probably be better at your career. That, as a result, you probably advance and so on. So you have a happier life, and you will have probably a more successful life. But it is true that the careers that you choose will have financial implications. Mm-hmm. And if you say, I want to be a poet or something along those lines, you better consider the financial implications of that. That doesn't mean that you have to go make a ton of money, because I think a lot of people fall into that trap, that they think the money is like vast amounts of money is vast amounts of success. And that's not true. In other words, is your work and your passion the same thing? So I think that what brings people happiness is meaningful work and meaningful relationships. Okay. If you have meaningful work, that you're into and your passion and your work's the same thing, and you have meaningful relationships, whether through that work or beyond, you're going to have probably a great life. Okay. And so you have to keep that in mind. And it doesn't have much correlation past a certain level of money. It doesn't have much correlation with that well-being, with the amount of money you have. And if you see studies across societies, and you'll see that past that certain basic level, there's no correlation between the amount of money they have and how much happiness they have or well-being. Okay. That the highest level of correlation across societies and studies of happiness and well-being is community. Do you have a sense of community? Do you have those around you who are your community? You'll live longer that way. You'll have a more joyous life and it'll be a better outcome. But anyway, so thinking about those things, I think, is important.
So in other words, it's always wise that you should always build good relationships and be good with people. Should it be a start for any man or woman when they start a journey in regards to being either financially secure or just to be financially good enough while having the backing of people you could trust to help in your journey for better prosperity? I mean, you could do both, but my understanding, my suggestion normally, because what Ray says, good, but I think it's always good to have good relationships and build proper networks that will furlong your whatever you're trying to accomplish. It'll furlong you so you don't have to worry about money and being potentially broke. Because last much, I rarely see a person that is not good in regards to building networks and relationships with others be always have a problem functioning and surviving in a society, in my opinion. That's just me. So I think that would be more of a direction most people should be taking wherever they're trying to accomplish generally. Well, still trying to provide for your own self-preservation, self-living, and all that stuff. All right, let's go.
Based on your life cycle in this book, Principles, Your Guided Journey, Create Your Own Principles to Get the Work and Life You Want, do you think you have to play different games in different seasons of your life cycle as it relates to generating wealth? And what I'm talking about here is really like risk profile, or what I should be optimizing for. Should I be trying to hang around with Ray Dalio, or should I be focusing on the job that pays me the most?
First of all, the answer is yes. And the second question you asked, the answer is that you should be around the people who are the best people to teach you, to operate by the mentors and the learnings and so on. You should be around the best people. And when I say best people, I mean people of good character and good capabilities. Okay. And so you should be around the best, not the job that pays you the most. And I could explain why that is. And yes, in terms of that arc, you will play it differently at different parts of your life cycle. So in the early part of your life cycle, what you're going to do is, the more learning and experiencing is the most important thing that you can do in the learning in the early part of your life cycle. It's like you're going to make your choices. What direction am I going to be in? And so on and so forth. So learn. Okay. That's most important. And then what you're at the end of your life cycle, you're pretty much relieved from all of that. You're not going to be working to earn. Okay. You're going to be free of all of that. You're going to have, and you have freedom of choices and so on. And you're going to be thinking about transitioning. How do I transition well-being, or how do I transition my wealth, or how do I transition and so on? That's where you are. Still, learning is a joy, but at the same time, in terms of trying to accomplish, it's not the same at your late part of your life cycle as it is in your early part of your life cycle.
So I want to ask about your early life cycle and what the most important strategic or wealth generating decisions you made that you would encourage everybody to consider if their nature is aligned to yours?
Okay. My nature was I hated school. I didn't like the whole thing of remembering this and then give it back to me. And there were these, history like there's William the Conqueror in 1066 and what did he do? And, like all of that was what education represented. And when I was 12, a kid, I earned money with odd jobs like I had a paper route and I mowed lawns and I caddied, and I took my caddying money. And when I was 12, everybody was talking about the stock market. So I put some money in the stock market. I didn't know what I was doing, of course, but I picked the stock. That was the only stock I ever heard of that was selling for less than $5 a share. And my reasoning was I could buy more shares. So if it went up, I could make more money. Okay, that was a stupid criteria, but it was a company that was about to go bankrupt, and another company acquired it, and it tripled in price. And I said, I like this game. So I got hooked on the game. I'm still hooked on the game, right? So I liked it. Okay, that affected me. So I barely got into C.W. Post College, and then I went to Harvard Business School, and that opened my eyes to the world in many ways because of who were there and what it was like and all that, the best and the brightest kind of thing. But I always still traded markets because I always played the game. I could tell you stories. Do you want a couple of quick stories?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm clerking on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange between graduating from college and in the summer, between graduating from college and going to Harvard Business School. And that is the summer of 1971. Mm-hmm. And on August 15th, 1971, Richard Nixon gets on the television and says that, the promise that you were going to be able to take your paper money and go get gold, you can't do that. And we're going to cut that off. He didn't say it in exactly those words, but money then was gold. And what we think of as paper money, fiat money, was claims on the gold. So I walked on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange that summer, and I thought the market was going to go down a lot, and the market went up a lot. And I didn't understand why, because I never went through a devaluation before. And I studied history, and I found that in March of 1933, Roosevelt got on the radio and made the exact same announcement that you're not going to get your gold and they're going to print the money. And when you print a lot of money, you have that. Okay.
What the hell? So what Roosevelt did back in 1933, that is, now my math is right, 92 years ago, when he manipulated the system by saying you're not in gold, that fluctuated the stock market. Let me look that up, man. I gotta look that up. Hold on, guys. I gotta look that up. I have to look that up, guys. Richard Nixon. At what part history did a sitting president say? All right. Let me look this up. That's something to look at. I have to look at that. I should timestamp some of this, guys, because this is very important. Very important. Okay. All right. Let's. All right. Okay. Okay. So it looks like Ray Dalio was right. This is something to very examine. This is very good. This is a good broadcast, guys. You guys gonna have to probably watch this attentively, for real. All right, let's keep going.
Okay. So I learned that history of things that never happened in my lifetime before were important things to understand. Okay. I went back then to Harvard Business School for 2 years. And 2 years later, as a result of all the printing of money and the oil shock, because of all of that, we had the 1973 oil shock. And now, because of my background, I'm hired to be director of commodities at a Wall Street brokerage firm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And then all sorts of things happened, turbulence and so on and so forth. That firm went broke. I went to another firm and I was rowdy. I wasn't your typical good employee, follow everything. And so I got fired. And that was in 1975. And then but clients all liked me for things. And so they would pay me for advice and I continued to trade the markets. And that's when I formed Bridgewater. Okay.
At what age?
That was 1975. I just passed along Bridgewater 50 years later.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's a journey there that has failures and successes and learnings. I have a principle. Pain plus reflection equals progress. Okay? Your best learnings come from the pain. It's a message. Pay attention. Learn how reality works and how to deal with it differently so you have principles for dealing with reality better. And I learned that process. And from that process, my company, Bridgewater, became the largest hedge fund in the world, extremely successful.
Managing how much?
$150 billion. 1,500 people, $150 billion.
And that's made you a very wealthy man.
And made me a very wealthy man, which, by the way, was not my intention. Okay? I just wanted to play the game and to have meaningful work and meaningful relationships. That was paramount. But it happened to be the game I played. If you're good at the game, you make a lot of money. And now I'm at a stage in my life where I want to pass things along. I need to pass things along, right? So hence the books, hence our conversation. Mm-hmm. And here we are. That's the life arc. But I learned a lot. And so that's the journey.
I think B2B marketers keep making this mistake. They're chasing volume instead of quality. And when you try to be seen by more people instead of the right people, all you're doing is making noise, but that noise rarely shifts the needle, and it's often quite expensive. And I know, as there was a time in my career where I kept making this mistake, that many of you will be making it too. Eventually, I started posting ads on our show sponsors platform, LinkedIn, and that's when things started to change.
As we continue, yeah, guys, I think we need to examine history very closely because there was something that I discovered, and before I play it, let me do this. I got to read this to y'all. Sorry about that, guys. I'm just going through something.
Just for context,
Okay.
people don't like talking about.
Okay, so let me do this. Let me fast forward. 45, 498. I gotta fast forward this carefully. All right, so there's no way going through this. I'm gonna have to. But I find it very interesting, guys, that how can I say this? Throughout the history, it seems to me the two people that did it was who's this? Richard Nixon and Bretton Woods system, the Bretton Woods system of 1944 from 1971. So Nixon and Roosevelt were the two presidents, from what I've noticed. Only ones that did it. All right. So usually a Google search will not help you find. So you're going to have to do some extra digging to follow the paper trail. You got to follow the history of how these things line up. Where unfortunately you can make a good profit on predicting movements of the markets just by history alone. So history is very important, and it goes to show you that why is it that they're not teaching actual history in your school systems? I'll tell you why they don't do it. Because if you have a appreciation and respect for history in its context, all of it, the good, the bad, ugly, you will not be so fooled in the current future of what you see where things going to line up. So meditate and think on that one. Let's go. Let's continue on this.
Prolific philanthropist. Also, Google says that your net worth is in the tens of billions of dollars. And I'm sure there's some people that have clicked on this conversation and aren't aware of the scale of wealth you built up and the scale of Bridgewater Capital and how prolific and famous it is in the investing world. In that 50-year life arc, one of the things you mentioned is pain. All of us will encounter pain. And you said pain plus reflection equals progress. How have you learned to deal with pain? You've had a lot of pain in all facets of life because you've lived the life arc and you continue to. What's the best principle for dealing with pain?
First of all, to calm yourself down and to get centered. Meditation has had a big beneficial effect on my life. We can get into meditation in a minute of how it has, but the ability to, in a sense, calm yourself down, and when the time is right, to reflect on what's happened, both to understand how reality works. You want to be a hyper realist. I understand how reality works. Therefore, I need to do this under this set of circumstances, which means developing principles. And so what I did when I would do that, anytime, whenever I would think, what should I do? Whether painful or not, I would pause, reflect on, what should I do if that happened again? And that's how I would write down my principles. And what I did was I wrote down a lot of principles. A lot of principles. If this happens, that happens, and whatever. And then, so I wrote these principles down. And then I found that in investing, if I can computerize those decision rules, I could back test them, see how they would have worked, and so on. So I built systems, decision-making systems. Computer would make decisions. So it was AI before LLMs, but it was AI to have decision-making criteria. So it would be like I would make a computer chess game that would play while I am playing my mental chess game, what moves we would make. And it's completely automated and so on. But what I'm trying to say is that reflecting on how does reality really work and what do I do when this happens to that happens is the development of principles. And that has been invaluable. And it also makes me see things differently. Because a lot of people, and if I didn't do this, I would be, seeing almost as a blizzard of things coming at me. Instead, I see everything as another one of those. So let's say, for example, it's a species. So it's like seeing, okay, that's what kind of species is it? And how do I deal with that species? So it's one of those rather than just a lot of things coming at me.
Pattern recognition of.
Yeah. But let's say if you think of it's a duck.
Okay.
Oh, okay. It's a duck. How do I deal with the duck? Or it's a lion. Okay. How do I deal with a lion? Okay. Rather than just a lot of things coming at it. So this principle thinking and seeing it that way had a big effect on the quality of my decision making, and that helped.
Two questions I had there is, to become a principled thinker, I need to do more reflection, right? And then the other thing is,
think about how does the machine, how does life, how do these things work? So that's what I mean. Okay.
And to write that down.
Write down your thoughts. I find sometimes what I would do is I'd dictate them into my iPhone. Okay. I'd say, no. Okay. This is how, when you're making a decision, why did you make that decision? So not just make a decision, but think about the criteria you're using to make the decision.
Also my emotions, my trauma, my insecurities, my anxiety.
Right. And you might say, when reflecting on that, is that helpful? Is that harmful? And what do I do about that? Like, for example, what you're referring to is, yes, that emotions and the things and all of those, you have to understand that basically the brain's got two parts to it, right? It has the logical part of your brain, reasonable, tries to reason things through, and that, which is conscious. And then it has the subconscious mind, which is the subliminal, that is really driving you. And so when you can reflect, okay, how are my emotions entering into it? What do I, and so on. And you can think and you can align that. That's very powerful. And meditation, by the way, naturally does that, because what you do when you meditate, and maybe a time's coming I should explain meditation, okay, how it works. What you do is, it's a process by which you sit quietly and you repeat in your mind what is called a mantra, which is a sound it's a word that has no meaning. Let me say the most classic example of that would be Om.
So in other words, you're casting a spell, a verbal spell in your subconscious to chime in. That's what I'm getting at. Y'all follow?
Okay. So you quietly there and you go, with your breath, you go, Om, like that. But you need to be taught. But anyway, Om. So when you're doing that, because your Om is in your mind or your mantra is in your mind, you're not able to have other thoughts. You'll see yourself wavering between doing that and staying on the mantra and then having thoughts. And then you go back to your mantra. When you are in the mantra a lot, then it disappears. The sound disappears and you go into your subconscious mind. That's what they call transcendental meditations, the type of meditation I do. And so you go there and you're not in a conscious state and you're not in a unconscious state. You're in a conscious state. So it's subconscious state. It's not unconscious is you're sleeping. Conscious is that you're awake like we are. You're in this. So it's a different state. Like if you hear that noise, you would hear that noise. It would be big, and not when you're sleeping. But when you're in your subconscious state, then it's relaxing, it's helpful. And this process helps to bring your conscious state and your subconscious state into alignment. In other words, you recognize both and it calms you down. It's like the ninja in the ninja movies, they're fighting, but it seems in slow motion. The camera shows them in slow motion and they're doing whatever they're doing along that. It kind of makes you in that kind of state of mind so that you're dealing with what's coming at you in that way. And so what you referred to is these things that happen, and how you deal with those is really important to the quality of your decision making.
How influential was transcendental meditation in your success?
Oh, enormously successful, enormously significant, very, very, very significant. In other words, that way of seeing things.
And how often?
And by the way, I would say there's a serenity prayer. The serenity prayer is, God, give me the serenity to accept that which I can't control, and give me the power to control that which I can, and the wisdom to tell the difference. Okay? And so to how you approach these things, we're talking about reflection. You asked me reflection. Okay? If you can reflect in that quality way, then you deal with anything. And I've dealt with the worst possible thing. I lost a son. Okay? And I would have rather died. I would have rather lost everything to lose my son. So it's the worst possible thing. And then to see what it did, the damage and the harm from the family, terrible. Okay. Then to go through that with meditation, with reflection, and so on, was invaluable. And people have their own challenges, but to be able to do it that way, I really urge your audience, I urge you to learn that. That's very helpful.
How did that tragedy change your perspective and your principles in any way on life, on happiness, on success, on all these things that you've written about?
Well, it's again, I go above it, and you reflect on the life arc, and I realize at that higher level that that's what the life arc is like. You'll in all my books, there's this arcing. This arcing here. Here's a bigger version of it. There's this arcing. Okay, I don't know if your camera sees that. Okay, whatever it is, and that's what life and evolution is like to me. Meaning, you make advances. You will have setbacks. Okay? If you reflect well and you learn how reality works and how you will deal with it, you will get past that and go on. And that's just what it is. That's just the way life is. And if you do that well, then that's your best possible life.
Are you religious? Are you a religious person?
I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual.
Okay.
The Dalai Lama, who I had the pleasure of meeting, told me, and I agree with, that religions are typically a mix between.
The one thing I like about Ray seems to be he's beyond more well-read. He likes to tap into the more spiritual and spiritual aspects of how to in tune with his inner self and the environment and surrounds around him, which I like. And I think most people don't understand. A lot of non-Black people have this and make the conscious effort to move beyond the physical realm. And some notes you could take to learn from. I'm just saying. Some that I spot out. Let's continue.
Superstitions and spirituality. There's half of it is that element that nobody knows, but there is the way people should deal with each other. There is karma. Okay. All religions, there's a part of them that says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or what goes around comes around. And then you get to the particulars, okay? And it is true that if we work well together, that even little things I can do to help you can make a big difference in your life. And little things that you can do to help me make a big difference in our lives. And so it's practical, and it is also joyous, okay? That creates a relationship. And we talked earlier about how that is like the source of great happiness. But when you have a community and you do that, you have a better society. And almost all religions will tell you that. There'll be elements of those. And when I believe in spirituality, what I also mean is we're all part of this greater whole. Okay? We're all part of the greater whole. And if you could see yourself as part of the greater whole and love the greater whole and whatever, that is spirituality, really. Okay? And so I will go through my life arc, okay, and I will die, and I'm comfortable with that, okay, in that, okay, it's all part of the greater whole, nature and whatever it is. That's true. I can't tell you about other things, but I do believe in the things I just told you.
When it comes to living a successful life, we've talked about having dreams and understanding your nature and aspiring for things, and then understanding reality, which transcendental meditation is a great mechanism and vehicle to do. And in your book about a successful life, you talk about plus determination. Plus determination. Hard work. If I want to be a successful man or woman, how important do you think hard work is?
Well, it gives you power. It's very important, right?
Some people,
I'm not saying they want to choose it, but the irony of things is there are first order consequences and there are second order consequences. This is like a rule of life, okay? And most of the time, the first order consequences, whether they're likable or not, has the opposite second order consequences. What I mean by that is like eating or exercising, okay? Eat the food you like. Second order consequences probably not going to be good. I don't want to exercise. Second order consequences won't be as good, okay? Working hard, which gives you strength. Where does strength come from? I mean, strength comes from working hard. So working hard will give you power. Power will make things easier and make things better. That's just the way it is.
And being open-minded while you do it? Something that was really
open-minded,
important to you.
Yeah. I say the importance of being open-minded and assertive at the same time. I watch people becoming so tied to their own opinions. Like, this is the greatest tragedy of mankind. The greatest tragedy of mankind, because it so easily can be fixed, is holding a strong opinion that is wrong, that you could have made right, better, if you were open to learning more. If you said, I want to be stress tested. I want my thinking to be stress tested. I want to make sure that I'm making the better decision. And so I'll be challenged. But a lot of people view that challenging like a fight. It's not a fight. If somebody holds a different opinion, it should prompt a curiosity. I don't know. Am I wrong or is they wrong? There's a 50% chance. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. So it should prompt curiosity and an exchange to try to make sure that you're seeing the whole picture and so on. But subliminal instincts are, I'm going to stick with it and I'm going to have a fight. That's a problem.
Because there's too much on the line for so many people to
It's subliminal. It just goes back to the mind thinking that the intellectual challenge is a fight. And it's egotistical, ego. I must be right.
As an investor and entrepreneur, that's obviously particularly important because you're constantly dealing with new information and feedback, which you need to be flexible.
That was one of the two things that changed my whole direction and made me successful. I can explain it if you want.
Please.
1979 and 80, I had calculated that American banks had lent more money to foreign countries that they were going to be able to pay back and that we were going to have a debt crisis. Very controversial point of view. In August of 1982, Mexico defaulted on its debts. And over the next decade, many other countries did, and it caused bank problems. However, at that time, I thought things were going to get bad, and that was the exact bottom in the stock market, August 1982.
Yeah, I don't recall the stock market crash around that year or something really drastic. Let's keep listening.
So I couldn't have been more wrong. I lost money for me. I lost money for the clients. I lost money. I was so broke that I had to borrow $4,000 from my dad to help to pay for family bills because I was faced with the choice. What am I going to do? And do I go back to work on Wall Street, get a tie, get on the train and go back to that, which is, again, not in my nature or whatever. And two things changed me. Okay, reflection. First of all, I learned what we were just talking about. I learned humility and fear of being wrong and open-mindedness. So I wanted the smartest people I could find to stress test my opinions, because I always realized I could be wrong. And then I learned how to diversify my bets so that I could dramatically reduce my risk without reducing my returns. Okay, that was the bottom. Okay, from that point all the way over, that following those principles took me to the biggest hedge fund in the world, the most successful, and so on, because I applied it to the markets, applied it to what we did, and so on. So that notion of reflection, and then how do you deal with what reality is like, and then, okay, they learn radical open-mindedness. In other words, like there's a principle in the book, you have to take in before you put out, or that decision-making is a two-step process. First take in, then decide. Okay? So yes, open-mindedness doesn't in any way minimize your ability to decide. So you still have the freedom to decide, but it's crazy not to be open-minded.
You recognize that the biggest threat to good decision-making is harmful emotions, and that two-step process is first learn and then make the decision, which is funny because it sounds simple. But when you said it, I think about all the worst decisions I've ever made in business, and I missed step one. I forgot to take a minute and do the evidence gathering or the information gathering process.
Yeah, just smart people who care about your decision say, stress test me.
Why don't we do that?
That ego and also instinct that's a fight.
Is there any advice you would give me on becoming a better decision maker? So I have a fund, I have many businesses. Is there any sort of practical, simple foundations of becoming a better decision maker that we haven't talked about? Get smart people to interrogate my thinking. Be open-minded.
I think we've talked about almost all of them. I think then you have to then know about how to leverage yourself. Okay. In other words, as you do more and more, how do you do more and more when your brain has a capacity limit? Okay. And there's only a certain number of hours in the day or the week. Okay. You have to know how to do that.
Is that focus or is that something?
No. It's knowing how to do it through others. Okay. It's knowing how to pick others and orchestrate well. It's like running a symphony or whatever. Okay. Get the best players. Okay. When I say, good character and good capabilities, and orchestrate them well. And then provide that leverage. Like when I was doing the most, I had 30 direct reports. Whatever the number is, it's always, the process is how to get more out of a minute or a day, not how to work harder. Okay, it's how to leverage yourself. And you're going to leverage yourself by picking the right people who you can trust. They're not going to screw you. They're going to operate in your interest, and they're going to be capable. And so a lot of people, what you can do is you can deal with them, and then you can say, I would deal with them on this 30 reports. I'd have maybe an hour meeting with them once every 2 weeks. And they'd go off and do things. And when you do that, you can even find people who are much better at things than you would be if you did them. Because if you have these different things, okay, you better, because otherwise you don't have the capacity.
You have these two key challenges to overcome as an entrepreneur, which is find these great, capable people that have great character, and then like bind them with the right culture to make sure that they do the best work.
Right. In other words, it's meaningful work and meaningful relationships through radical truthfulness and radical transparency.
Radical truthfulness and transparency.
Okay. First, if you can have meaningful work and meaningful relationships, the people are on the mission with you. Wow, that's fantastic. But you better be truthful and transparent. That'll show that you're honest, and you better, because you have to get a truth, including what people are bad at and how to deal with all those things. And most people hide them. They don't bring them out into the open. Okay, everybody's worried about hurting each other's.
Now I let that rant because guys are multitasking in other compartments. Another side note, because since we're looking at Ray's breakdown, people don't know what books the man has written. So I'll give you a rundown of the 3 books. He has probably 6 books. Most of the books that should be looked at, I would say the one that I looked at most of his reviews, and let me make sure I'm right, which one from demographics of timelines, which books really truly let me see, are broken down categorically. And it looks like the first book he written was in 2005, up to the last book that was released. Well, actually, he has a new one now. Wait. Yeah, I think it's a new one. Yeah, this is a new one. That's not come out until next year. And this one is titled The Principles of Investment and Economists. Ray is one of the world's most successful investors and entrepreneurs, share economic, blah, 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 blah. In 19, Ray become, yeah, we know that. The principles. Mark career here. Here's from a man who has been called both Steve Jobs, an investor and philosophy king of financial universe. This one is supposed to come out in February. So it looks like this might be dealing more of the investment side. And it's an audio CD, so it's something to look into. So right now, the count for books he has right now is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and probably 7. Okay. And he has a master class too. Ain't that something? All right, let's continue. I'm gonna let this run a little more and then end this because we're far beyond it. So I'm gonna let it play for another 10 minutes. Let's go.
Feelings or that, and then so they're not honest with each other, and that's the barrier. We talked about the barrier of disagreement. It's like that. Okay, I don't know. Are you good at that? Are you striking out? If you're striking out, and what is it? How do we deal with it? You better talk about that clearly, because you need to have an A team of players. You have to work yourself so your team is an A team of players who are tight.
How did you do that at Bridgewater? How did you make people honest?
Oh, well, first of all, I had a policy: talk behind another person's back critically. If that happens 3 times, you're out. And then I would have radical transparency so everybody could see everything. So you could see why I'm making decisions, and I would reflect. But the main thing is, if it's happening or not. Okay. And I made that comfortable because that's ordinarily uncomfortable. We talked about the fact that there's an intellectual you and there's an emotional, subliminal you. Mm-hmm. Okay. I made them understand, like if I had a team, a football team, and so on, that this is going to be better for the team, it's going to be better for you, and you'll have your evolution. Because what do you want to have? Dishonesty? Do you want people to think one thing about you and really say something different?
Mm-hmm.
How is that going to work? So there's an intellectual, okay, we believe it. And then also by having the meaningful relationships. I mean, I don't force them. I create a culture of meaningful relationships so that they have known each other for a long time. They go to each other's parties, or they go to each other's, there are funerals, there are baby showers, there are these things. Not that anybody's, I created clubs. I said, any club that you want to create that has more than 20 people, whatever it is, up to $500 per person, I'll pay for half. So I don't care what it is, if it's play softball or play chess or whatever it is that you're enjoying each other's company, or you want to go to ball games or something. I don't care what it is. I'll pay for half up to $500. So nobody has obligations to or something. But if I have that kind of meaningful relationships, so you can talk honestly with each other, I found that very helpful.
And you famously built an idea meritocracy, which in my understanding means where the best idea ends up winning in the company versus just your idea because you're the most powerful person in the business.
Right. I mean, what do I want? I want the best idea to win.
This sounds simple, but again, it's not how businesses operate. One of the fascinations I've always had is that when businesses get bigger and they have more intellectual horsepower if you just added up how many brains they had, they sometimes get less innovative, and it feels like the CEO.
Well, because they become more bureaucratic and more fragmented.
Yeah.
Okay. I found it to be true, and it's well-established fact, that if you get a group of people past a certain size, which is 75 to 100 people, they don't know each other. Okay. They start to become different. And then you lose those relationships, you lose a lot, and so on. I found it because at the holiday season every year, what I would do is I would write everybody long notes in their cards, and I would pick an individualized holiday gift for them. And when it got to be the 67 people, I remember the year, it broke my back. I mean, I just couldn't do it. Okay. And I realized that at that point, I was going into another frame. Okay. And so it's an organizational reality that you can keep that group. And then what you have to do is then you have those different areas, and you have to create cohesiveness between those different cohesiveness, common mission. And how do you do that between that? So like, for example, when we would have our holiday party, where it used to be everybody would be, sort of go in and you have a holiday party and everybody together. What I found out is we had a big arena that we would go to, and I'd have both. I'd have, that department is in that area and whatever, and then they come out and they all mingle together and so on. So there's an organizational thing that you've got to realize in terms of culture and management of that.
It's like villages in a city, I guess. Like you basically build the villages and then...
Good example, yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Our media company's at that exact point now. It's at that 90 odd people.
Oh, okay. There you are.
So when you said 75 to 100, I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking about all the things I should be doing now to counteract some of those adverse effects of the culture splintering or relationships breaking down. But I guess you've described it there. Interesting. And I have to say, one of the things that I found to be I'm 33 years old. I just turned 33 last week. It's crazy how often people say that hiring is the most important thing. Yet when you look at what entrepreneurs are spending their time on, it's usually like the product, the marketing, etc. And it's maybe like 1 or 2 hours, in some cases, if they're lucky, on finding truly exceptional people. They often just outsource it to someone else, the recruitment team. When you think back through your career, how important was it to find truly exceptional people?
Of course. Well, I systemized it. First of all, I think that anything I do or one does can be systemized. So I would think, what are the personalities? What are the backgrounds of the people that I'm hiring? What are the choices? How do I specify it? And I got it by also maintaining a lot of data with people. There's a TED talk I did that explains how like data, everybody's going around and they're operating in a certain way. So I know what people are like. If you know what people are like, you know what you can expect of them. And then I would then say, in a very data way, those people who are successful in these jobs have the following attributes that would create a job specifications for that type of job. So I knew that in that type of job, there would be that type of person I'm looking for. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. What works? They work. Okay. Data. And then I would find, that would be my job spec. And so we had the systems, and then we had some people who were responsible for doing that, because you're right, it takes time. How can I interview all those people and so on? But who can you trust? And you're operating that way. And then evaluation process doesn't stop when you hire them. Okay, the evaluation process continues from that moment, and you still learn more about what they're like, and you do that same process and still think, would I still have hired them? And if I wouldn't have hired them, in the first place, then they shouldn't be there. And so I have a process and people in process.
Do people change after a certain point? So if you've hired someone in 6 months, in 12 months, and they haven't changed, is it worth giving them another year? Is it worth a performance review?
I found out that for me, the big question, mostly, there were two big questions, but the big question is, how do you adapt to my culture? And that would take about 18 months to find out. Like, can you speak honestly about can we have thoughtful disagreement? Do you like this evolutionary process where you're challenged and all of this kind of thing? That culture. That'd take about 18 months. And then roughly speaking, then learning about the people, their strengths and weaknesses would take 18 months to 2 years, maybe something along those lines. And so then, you could pretty much decide, but always being open every day by day. So nobody's surprised that you're always talking about things, how's it going?
Make sure you keep what I'm about to say to yourself.
All right, I guess we'll stop right there. I'm not gonna do all that. Let me see. I hope you guys gained something out of this. Shout out to the brother from UK for bringing Ray Dalio on as a guest to talk about this up and coming American end, or it's the end of America or UK in regards to the financial crisis or anything that what's to come. Overall, I hope you guys take some out of this with a little commentary. I think the one thing you should gain out of this is not just to prepare of what's to come, but to understand the historical ramifications of why history plays a part of where the world is shaping and where the world is going. And nothing else you take out of this broadcast, look and take into that. Besides, we'll understand of how money really works personally. And you're not going to understand how money works unless you understand the history of how money plays a factor in regards to the economic either rise or collapse of nations. This is your ends. Like always, like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. And please leave comments at the end of this stream. Thank you for watching. Until next time, and I mean until next time, guys, take care.